Okay, so we can start. Okay, so the I know how you call that momentum. I would call this acceleration. Is it the proper word? We've been working since COP21 with some of you, most of you, to try to put the buildings at the level it should be on the climate question, and it's been growing slowly. And then, what a year! We launched the Buildings Breakthrough last year. We had this global forum with the Déclaration de Chaillot, supported by 64 countries plus European Commission, meaning that this is not only a momentum, it is really an acceleration. And this session is all about that. So I'm not going to be very longer because we have very distinguished panelists here. The only question is, am I going to be able to pronounce the names properly? Because it's a question for French people working with international matters. Anyway, it's my pleasure to welcome Gulnara to give the introduction speech. I'm going to give... you need that?
Yeah, that's good. Yes. Hello, you hear me? Yes, it's first of all great to welcome you here at the Buildings and Cooling Pavilion. I think we had amazing time already at this pavilion because we really saw that at the pavilion we're presenting lots of very concrete solutions, very concrete projects and ideas in different contexts. And about what Laurent, you are saying about the acceleration, I think Pavilion really demonstrated lots of examples of accelerations of different technologies, on different materials, on different, on embodied carbon, on operational carbon, on, on technologies. And this is what we want to see at the end, because UNEP just recently published the UNEP emissions report, and you probably all read it because it was an important input into the discussions here also at the negotiations as well. And we see that we are not really reaching the goal. So this acceleration is really very, very needed. So we are really happy as a Global Alliance Building Construction Secretariat being also chosen and trusted to coordinate as a secretariat also to Intergovernmental Council on Buildings and Climate. And big thanks to France for organizing the global forum on buildings and climate, which I think, Laurent, you just arrived, but so many people already said how great that event was, how important, what important milestones that event was, and also it resulted actually in negotiated text of the Déclaration de Chaillot. It was thanks to French leadership, this Déclaration Chaillot came up. So we're very happy to have over 60 countries who joined it. So now it's really, very concrete groundwork. So we already organized the first online technical discussion online, and then there was second discussion organized on margins of OECD buildings meeting. There is already a term of reference of the ICBC and also a draft work plan. But these 2 weeks were very inspiring because we're really collecting all possible ideas from the member states about what direction to go, what are concrete topics to discuss, in order really to make sure that we are very effective and we really help to help acceleration process. So we really hope also that you join us to the ministerial roundtable where the ICBC will be actually inaugurated. And we're very happy to confirm that we have actually a very good lineup of the ministers, vice ministers, and of course, as always, it's expanding. So we actually probably will be going much longer than what was as a proposed lineup. But there is a big commitment we see from many, many governments. So it is at 11 a.m. At the special conference room, special meeting room number 2, Mukham. Just here where the Marrakesh partnership is. So please join us. And the last not the least, big thanks again to the co-chairs of the ICBC, and we definitely will be further on keeping your hands and following your guidance. So it's France as a co-chair, which was actually behind the whole process. We're very also pleased Brazil and Kenya joining the co-chairman. So we are very excited to be your helping hand as a secretariat and really working together to help you to, in a way, implement the dream that you as governments have and support also governments in the process. Back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gunnar, for this inspiring introduction. So I will call my distinguished panelists here. Della Savaienea, that's it. Assistant Chief Executive Officer for Planning and Urban Management Agency of Samoa. Yes, I think it's better that everybody takes place and then we go around the questions. So Kennedy Mateka, so sorry, for Deputy Director for Building Safety, Ministry of Lands, Public Works, Housing and Urban Development in Kenya. Will Wild. Nobody needs to present Will Wild, but it's still Built Environment Lead, Climate Champion Teams. And he also a co-author of the Buildings Breakthrough Report. Yeah. And Anurag Mishra, who's Senior Energy Specialist in Green Climate Fund. So, from a national perspective, Della, as a Pacific SIDS, how can Samoa support Chaillot Declaration implementation in raising the awareness for building decarbonization and resilience? Yeah, you need a mic, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm supposed to give it. Yeah.
Thank you. I thought I was going to use my island screaming voice from here. But thank you for inviting us here. Through the declaration, Samoa as a Pacific small island developing state, we acknowledge that with the acceleration of climate change, our buildings, our infrastructures will increasingly be susceptible and vulnerable to climate risks and hazards. Our loss and our damage is and will be great. This is further exacerbated by the trajectories of escalating urbanization by 2050 and the expected demand for raw materials doubling by 2060. So in knowing all this, what are we as a small island developing state doing to support the declaration's implementation and awareness? First, we've started with the implementation of our regulatory frameworks and mandatory building and energy codes. We have a national building code, and it's been 5 years since it's implemented, and through which we have a specific GHG reduction section, as well as specific focus on green buildings, and as well as making use of what's available, sustainable and available in our own backyard. So that's including our local timber. We have found out that it's much more strong and durable after 10 years compared to the imported treated timber, as well as the use of sennets made from coconut husks. We have lots of coconuts back home, hence we're called coconuts, as an alternative to the use of nails. And then we also have our Energy Management Act, and this looks at household appliances meeting the minimum energy efficiency performance, as well as standard labeling. And then we also have our National Urban Policy, which focuses on the development of secondary townships. Yes, Samoa is a small country, but our urban area is growing at an unplanned sort of way. And then secondly, through the promotion of low carbon, durable and cost-effective construction materials. So recently we've been considering bamboo, in addition to the sennets as previously mentioned. And lastly, Samoa, as the chair of the Alliance of Small Island States, or AOSIS for short, we've been using this platform to advocate for our small island nations, our crisis, as well as our fight to keep the 1.5 degrees Celsius in alignment with the Paris Agreement, as well as our NDCs. while I have the platform, I'm sorry, in saying that what can ICBC do for Samoa and the PCITs? And we seek inclusivity and specific considerations of CIT's country's climate crisis. We seek technical assistance and capacity building in accessing climate finance, urban climate financing, and we seek elevated, or to use your words, accelerated commitment from all partners to the implementation of the declaration, not just with words, but with actions. While we talk, we, the CITs, are living it. Thank you.
Great. Well, yes, thank you for that. Samoa is not only doing good, but also helping us to carry this word, and this is very, very supportive for the ICBC. The way we see, and we will see with the co-chairs, the Déclaration de Chaillot is a win-win. It's really, the question is not to make something live, but to make it live really, and to make it profitable for the people who come and work with it. So Kennedy, Kenya is also going to take the vice chair of the ICBC. Thank you for that. It's an important step for us to be able to share this with countries and other countries. The purpose of France here is not to kind of grab things, but really to have other countries coming in and things going on. This is very important for us. So how can ICBC support Kenya's efforts, and what are the Kenya's ambitions with the ICBC?
Thank you for that question, and thank you everyone for inviting us. We are really glad to be here, and that there is a lot that is happening in Kenya, especially within the building and construction sector. And in line with the question that Ves did ask, as a country, we are coming up with our decarbonization roadmap, very key pathway document that is going to guide us through up to 2050. We are keen on harnessing and investing and promoting serious business investments using that kind of a document with a view of encouraging quite a number of our partners to come forward. And therefore, as we develop the document, we have ambitions within the document. And therefore, as we develop the document, as we look forward to implementation of that document, we'll be keen to invite each and every one of you to come forward and find space to support not just Kenya, but the region in terms of developing the document and even using that document or coming up with a document that our neighbors can really look into and see the sense in the process, and therefore see an opportunity further to develop their own document. Addition to that, we are keen on coming up with a system that supports the business investment platform, so that we really find space, we really find an opportunity working together with our colleagues and our partners in the whole process. And therefore, ICBC is that platform that we have been looking for, a platform that brings together the business community, the state and non-state actors, so that we champion, an initiative all together. And therefore, we'll be keen to see how best that platform can be used for even our business and investors, so that we harness the best out of ICBC initiatives. We'll be keen to see how ICBC supports the policy frameworks, not just for Kenya, but even for our own brothers and sisters in the global south. Essence being that there is a lot that is happening in the global south, and especially in Africa, when you talk about the issues around urbanization and the opportunities that lie into that. And therefore, we call upon each and every one of us as we champion the ICBC initiative. Then we also see business and investment opportunities that arises from urbanization and economic growth in our area. How do you look at what is our vision for ICBC? Where we sit, we realize that when you talk about the UNFCCC membership, we're talking about close to 190 member states. And we look forward that ICBC will get near that number. That will be a good initiative so that we bring almost everyone on board for us to make, that global initiative that we so wish to undertake. Additionally, there's something that we realized about policies, that this platform, ICBC, has an opportunity of even giving us, an harmonized standard regulatory frameworks by various member states. If you look at the various policy frameworks that are provided for by various countries, there are some gaps, there are some we all need to create some synergy around that. And therefore, ICBC will create that very opportunity that we are looking at, so that even those of us, even some of our country members who are really, not much in terms of progression of the policies around the building and construction sector, then ICBC should provide that opportunity for, enhanced policy frameworks within those countries. And therefore, we're also keen to see how best ICBC can play that platform for business and investment support to our private sector, aware that the building value chain processes is more of what happens in our private sector. So government remains to be enablers and coordinators of our process, but we look forward harnessing and bringing more of our private sector and business community into this engagement with a view of moving the journey together. Lastly, if you look at the international conventions and treaties, it's unfortunate that building and construction sector has one solid treaty. And that treaty is Safety in Construction Treaty of 1988. It's called C-167. I would wish one day that this initiative supports and create an enabling environment for countries to come up with an international treaty relating to building and construction sector. This is what other international organizations have done, and we see an opportunity with the ICBC to not just champion that cooperation, but also see the legal aspect, see better ways of even coming together in a manner to create or to have an international treaty or a convention around this conversation. Thank you.
Well, well, this is a co-chair. Antonio, the level is, sorry for that, but it's Kenya, okay, upgraded a little, okay. So well, we see this Declaration Chaillot as the global political framework. We see this global ABC as the platform gathering everybody really. And we also launched the Buildings Breakthrough to catalyze action for a small number of front runners in some way, supported by a number of willingful initiatives to go further and to tackle some very precise points and go to the point in terms of so how can the Buildings Breakthrough and support the ICBC and how can it work together?
Thank you, Yves Laurent. Oh, I can hear myself.
I'm sorry, I just want to say that I think we're going to be thrown out. It's not normal but we're going to be thrown out of this pavilion in about 10 minutes. I don't know why. But anyway.
I will talk fast.
No. We will stay. We'll stay.
Well, I saw this question come through as I was travelling over here, and just the question: how do the ICBC and the Buildings Breakthrough work together? It's amazing that we can even ask that question. Over the last 5 years, everyone here has been working hard to get buildings up the climate agenda for so many good reasons. And as you spoke to at the start, the progress we've seen in the last 12 months is absolutely phenomenal, right? The launch of the Buildings Breakthrough at COP28, the declaration to Chaillot in March with the Global Forum, and the emerging Intergovernmental Council, and potentially an international treaty. Be absolutely fantastic. And with all those emerging initiatives, it can feel a little bit complex, right? And that's a good problem to have, because it speaks to how fast we're moving and how quickly things are gaining traction. And the Intergovernmental Council and the Buildings Breakthrough are two complementary and distinct initiatives, both aim to drive traction around international collaboration for the building sector. The Council and the Declaration de Chaillot that enabled it have a political objective. They establish a general alignment, consensus, and commitment towards decarbonising and making resilient our building sector by 2050. The Buildings Breakthrough has an operational aim. It really takes a near-term target goal of 2030 and works to drive collaboration under the goal statement of near zero and resilient buildings being the new normal by this time. An action under the Buildings Breakthrough can be used to complement those across all countries under the ICBC and help support it. But I reckon even that description is a little bit complex and technical. So on my flight on the way over here, I was thinking about how can we make this a little bit more accessible to help us think about it. And maybe it was the lack of sleep I'd had, but I had this idea that the goal that we're going for of a decarbonised and resilient built environment is a shared goal. It's a mountain that we're all trying to climb. And the Declaration de Chaillot, that was where was effectively 60 countries coming together to say, yes, this is a really important mountain, and we're all committed to climbing it. And in doing so, it was really important to recognise that no country will take the same route up that mountain. Each country will have to find their own way and form partnerships along the way. And no country is starting from the same place either. And this is where the Council and the Buildings Breakthrough play a really vital role. And I felt it was like a communication system, right? This is how we can stay in touch with each other as we all ascend the mountain together, you know. And the Council and the Buildings Breakthrough are like two different channels on the radio, or two different channels on the communication system. The Council itself allows countries to regularly talk to one another. It allows us to track progress, understand how others are progressing, and to really sharpen efforts on particular areas that are important to key sectors, whether that's the finance we've heard from Kennedy, or the priorities of the small island states. And the Buildings Breakthrough is perhaps another channel on that radio, perhaps one focused on how do we ascend to base camp, you know, that near-term goal of 2030, near zero and resilient buildings. And in doing so, because of the near-term goal, it allows us to focus the cooperation around priority actions. And really, this is our ability to share our maps of the terrain, our ability to share equipment and say what's working and what isn't working for us, and help us really learn from each other. And bring in the support of pioneers like industry and NGOs as well. So both of these initiatives play a really important role in catalysing and driving international collaboration, in supporting our countries in taking their own route up the mountain. Now, I hope that analogy is useful. Please make it your own, because I would love to hear how that reflects with other people's understanding in this space. And I want to say, if you want to hear more about the Buildings Breakthrough, please join us back here tomorrow at 12:30, where we'll have a session all about the action that's emerging. And as Gulnara kindly signposted, we have the first ministerial meeting of the Intergovernmental Council on Wednesday. So please do join us for that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. It's yes, I like the analogy with the mountain. Everybody racing to keep some snow on top. That's that's the question. So we need money for that. So we get to the finance perspective with you. Everybody must turn to you with talking about money every time. That must be tiring. But anyway, that's really a question. So. The ICBC thematic for the upcoming years focus on the crucial question of financing. So how does the GCF provide innovative blended financing solutions to the sector?
All right, thank you so much. And first of all, this COP is referenced as Finance COP, so quite appropriate for GCF to talk about financing. But also, when I was invited for this session, I went back and checked, like, what are we doing in the building sector? And here are the few things which I really figured out. One is there's a lot of action which is happening in the climate sphere links back to buildings and not necessarily branded as buildings action. And when I look back at our portfolio with regard to scaling distributed solar, rooftop solar, it is branded as a solar program, but where is it happening? It's happening on buildings. Or what we do with regard to climate resilience of infrastructure in buildings, it's happening in buildings. What we do with regard to efficiency and standards and leveling of equipments, eventually they are getting used in buildings. And lastly, buildings is a place where we're connecting climate action to individuals, where individuals are making choices about building design, the materials or the equipments, and even the use of electricity in those buildings. And that's quite powerful. So I appreciate the effort of ICBC to really bring this to the center stage. And it's quite evident that 38% of emissions come just from building sector. Now, in terms of financing, what GCF does is we have two windows of financing. One is the GCF readiness window, and that allows countries to use GCF grant resources to create the enabling environment. And I will say that it is the foundation for a lot of action with regard to buildings, whether the building codes, whether the equipment's labeling standards, or we talk about community engagement or working with the local bodies. All of that require a lot of preparedness on the groundwork, and that is what GCF readiness resources support. Beyond that, we also invest into funding of projects, and we have figured out a few places where we were able to use this more innovatively. For example, energy insurance certificate scheme, which we started as one of the project in early 2018 in one of the country, got expanded to a few other countries, and that really drove the market for ESCOs in a few countries. So I will say that not directly investing into a project, but investing into structures which enable larger investment would be a beneficial way. We are also invested into a cooling facility, what was amongst the first cooling facility in 2020, which also driving a lot of innovative deployment of cooling technologies there. And the last point is, again, what we heard is there is no single solution because every country is in a different stages of development. We have invested into the buildings, which are old buildings, but retrofitting to make them more efficient. But we also see a lot of countries are getting into a new phase of development, and about 60% of new buildings are yet to come in several countries, which means there's a huge opportunity to make those investments supported by the enabling environment and the ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm just going to be a little politically correct here, which is my... Gulnara, don't be afraid. When you're talking about finance, and this is what we try to say in the Declaration Chaillot, of course there is a question of how to enhance, how to have more green finance into buildings. The main question is how to phase out brown buildings that are currently being built. The question is, we are just building these days ready to retrofit buildings. And it's not billions, it's trillions each year that are invested into the building sector. Again, real estate is 60% of global wealth, okay? Meaning that, how do we assess these portfolios? How do we assess these values, these assets? Okay, so I just want, what we're doing, it seems that working for green building is something like a hippie thing, like, okay, well, let's be green, very good. It's not a hippie thing, it's just like stranded asset, buildings that won't be fit for use. I'm working in a building, my Ministry of Ecology, okay, is a building where you can't work in summer and you can't work in winter. I mean, it's really costly, okay? So the question is, what are going to become these assets? We're not hippies here. We're just securing the global wealth. If so we are starting this is an announcement. We are starting with OECD. We are starting to work on this question. How do the people evaluate their assets in terms of real estate, and how do they take into account climate change, which is not only the question of potential catastrophes and things like that, but also the fact that they are going to have stranded assets. How do they evaluate these stranded assets? How do they project themselves in the future? And how do we evaluate the money that will be necessary at the end of the day to comply with the Paris Agreement, because if you just a figure, I mean it's absurd, but I'm sorry for the timing. Yes, I know. Just a figure. So real estate is globally nearly 60% of global wealth. If you imagine that in each building you will have to do 10% of its value in refurbishment to make it complying with the Paris Agreement or with the climate, the incoming climate, what is the variation of the global waste that you produce? Okay, so this is a very serious question. It's not a hippie question. So I'm happy to give the floor to Antonio da Costa to conclude our session, because I see that we really need to go now. So I'm leaving here and leaving the floor to Antonio da Costa. Thanks to all. And maybe you can stay there while Antonio is giving his conclusions.
Merci, Yves. Okay, so I know we're running out of time, and I hope I make sense. I should be sleeping at this time. At least yesterday, I was going to be sleeping at this time, and I'm fully awake, having breakfast, and enjoying this talk. No, we should be all hippies, and let me be very certain about this. We should all have a very hippie agenda in terms of the need of changing the ways in which we build, we consume, we progress, and that's the point. And so the hippie culture, with some adaptation for a guy who's wearing a bow tie here, it's needed. And so let me tell you two things which you will hear for sure. First, we will try to do COP30 in Brazil a COP of cities, not just of the forest. And therefore, the built environment will be at the center stage, and we are working on that. And that's why Brazil joined this coalition and was willing to take part in organizing the way forward. We've been thinking a lot about this agenda. And from our perspective, I'll give you two ideas that we hope we can also include in our agenda of discussions. And I fully share the concerns of all the panelists, including the one of Yves, with the exception that he doesn't want to be a hippie and I do. I think it's important for this agenda that we want to. First, Brazil is a country where almost 70% of construction is auto construction, okay? And where standards are established, building standards are established by municipalities, because we are a federation of state and municipalities. So there are two things that we need urgently. First and foremost, see how are we going to decarbonize the self-built industry. And I'm not talking just of slums, although slums is also critical. We need to have solution of decarbonization for informal housings in Brazil and in the developing world. But we need to see how do you incorporate this agenda into those who build their own houses. And secondly, how we actively involve local governments, because local governments are the ones who will be changing the standard setting and will be providing the inputs that we need for the whole building sector, the industry, the production of materials, everything that needs to decarbonize. So I'll invite you to do these two considerations and think about it, because we are actually thinking actively about this, and I'll complement this later in this week when I have an opportunity to talk. But one, how do we incorporate the self-built sector into the decarbonization of buildings? And secondly, how we bring into the local governments actively into this agenda, because the national governments won't suffice. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we have a bottom-up Brazil and a top-down Kenya, and we'll try to figure out how to balance that. So that's great. Thank you for the perspective, and thank you for your participation. It was a very important session. I learned lots of things, and personally I learned lots of things, so that's great. Thank you very much. Bye. The picture.